Hey guys, how you doing? This is Mr. Powers here. All right, let me stop. As you guys say, let me stop. All right, so the purpose of today's lesson is to get you to understand a little bit about who Abraham Lincoln was. And so today's lesson is actually going to be a little bit of a web quest. And so a lot of it is going to be dependent on how well you guys are going to navigate a particular website. I'm going to share my screen and just familiarize you just a little bit about what your document looks like. Hope you guys are doing great today, by the way. So the document that you guys are going to be working with is titled Abraham Lincoln, the Great Emancipator. And now a lot of you kind of skip over the fact that sometimes the letters are blue and you don't necessarily understand that that's a hyperlink. So what I want you to do is click on here, and I want you to click on that website. It's going to take you to a National Park Service website. You're going to see this, and I want you to kind of scroll down a little bit here. So the way that today's lesson kind of works is you guys are trying to determine, I'm going to bring you down to the bottom here. You guys are trying to determine whether or not you think Abraham Lincoln deserves the title of the Great Emancipator. The first thing that you have to kind of understand is what the heck does emancipate even mean? So you have computers with you, so you don't really need me giving this to you, but what I will do is I will give you that definition. So to emancipate means to set free from a political, social, or legal restriction. Obviously, we are talking about the system of slavery here. You can call it a political and a social and an economic system, quite frankly. I want to go over just really quickly this quote here. So Abraham Lincoln, quite frankly, is probably the top 5 most important presidents of all time. But I think it's also really important that we're understanding the context of the full situation here. So I have a quote here from him from 1854, and it says, if person A, can prove, however, conclusively that he may, of right, enslave person B, why can't person B snatch the same argument and prove equally that he may enslave person A or group A or whatever the case may be? So what he's saying here is, why is it okay for white people to have made this decision, Europeans really, which turn into Americans, make a decision that Africans should be enslaved because they're Africans or because they're black? He's kind of exploiting the entire, thesis behind why Africans are allowed to be enslaved in the first place. It's kind of hypocritical, quite frankly. So there's a couple things that we have to go over first before you actually start this web quest yourself. So the first prompt here after your do now says, people often credit Lincoln with freeing the slaves, which he does because he is president when that happens. What is his initial purpose? Well, his initial purpose is to stop the spread of slavery in the United States. His initial purpose is not to emancipate or free slaves of slavery. It's a very important distinction, quite frankly. So it's not necessarily that he set out in his presidential aspirations to stop slavery in the South. It was that I don't want slavery to continue westward, but slavery can kind of exist in the South itself. And now he argues this because he believes that, quite frankly, one group of humans enslaving another group of humans is not something that's going to last forever. I guess he doesn't understand how horrible white people are in America. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, you don't necessarily need this part anymore. So I'm actually going to close out of these class notes. I'm going to show you the version of what you actually need here. So this is what your document looks like. Now, I want to point something out here. There are purple highlighted sections here. The reason that those purple highlighted sections are here are because those are going to be indicators of where you want to look in the website, in the link that I provided for you. So for example, I'll do this first one with you. You'll kind of follow through with the next questions. I'll kind of preview those for you though. So first and foremost, how does he argue, he being Abraham Lincoln, that slavery at its core principles are hypocritical in 1854? Hypocritical meaning that they kind of go against their own theories. So I find 1854 here. Oh, a fragment on slavery. This could very possibly be it. Interesting. He also talks about it in October 1854. Interesting. So we might have to be doing a little bit of research here, but that's totally okay. I'm going to teach you a shortcut really quickly in this website that will help you a lot. So I'm going to jump back real quick. So we see July 10th, 1858 is going to be the second question. Now, here's a shortcut for you if you happen to be working on a computer. If you press Control F, a little window is going to pop up here. Yada, yada, yada. I'm going to type in July 10th, 1858. July 10. Oh my God, here it is already. Great. It will jump to that spot in the website for you so that you're not sitting there kind of scrolling. If you're on a phone, I can't really help you so much that way. If you can find a shortcut, that's cool on a tablet or whatever, but I'm not very sure. So again, why is he saying that slavery is hypocritical in 1854? Well, let's go ahead and find out here. So 1854, cool, let's start here. Lincoln often encountered views supporting slavery. In his fragment, he countered the arguments that slavery was justified based on color and intellect. If A can prove blah, 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 that's the quote that I have above. So you say A is white and B is black. It is color then, the lighter having the right to enslave the darker. Take care by rule that you are to be a slave of the first person with fairer skin than you. So what he's really saying is like, if you're like white, but it's like you can tan or whatever, you could be enslaved by somebody who's super duper white or whatever the case may be. It's just such a stupid argument is what he's kind of saying. Hypocritical, one could argue. That would be a beautiful example of what you have there. You do not mean color exactly. You mean the whites are intellectually the superiors of black and therefore have the right to enslave them. Take care again. By this rule, you are to be a slave of the first person with an intellect superior to your own. So you can enslave people who are not as smart as you. So that anybody who's smarter than you can enslave you, sir. It doesn't make very much sense. So what Abraham Lincoln is doing here is he's kind of pointing out these hypocrisies of the practices of slavery, the justifications, if you will, that people provided, Southern Democrats provided in the 19th century, right before the Civil War. I almost said World War II, but it made no sense. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to read the rest of these questions for you so that you have an idea of what you should be looking for. So on July 10th, 1858, what does Lincoln predict about slavery's future in the United States? What is he going to say is going to happen to slavery in the United States? In the fifth Lincoln-Douglas debate, what major claim does Lincoln make about the Declaration of Independence? So make sure that you're citing the Declaration of Independence here. What is he going to say about it? It's okay. You can unplug yours. In the sixth Lincoln-Douglas debate, Stephen Douglas makes an argument that the founding fathers made this nation half free and half slave. So there was supposed to be a half slave country, apparently. How is Abraham Lincoln going to exploit that or show that that is pretty stupid as well? In the seventh and last Douglas debate, Lincoln clarifies that he never intended to set out to abolish slavery. He never really wanted to get rid of slavery altogether. Didn't really care, to be honest. Explain his arguments on slavery. The last question that you have to be searching for in a speech in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1859. Shout out to the Bengals who just drafted Joe Burrow. In 1859, Lincoln is very clear on his position moving forward on slavery. What is his plan going to be if he's elected president of the United States? Very important. And then lastly, you don't necessarily need to do any research on this one here, but be looking anything up, but in 2 sentences, and I realize that looks very horrible right there in the yellow. Does Abraham Lincoln deserve the title of the Great Emancipator, given his position while running for president? Now, I will share this with you. I'm going to unshare my screen. I will share this with you. Abraham Lincoln is called the Great Emancipator because he gives the Emancipation Proclamation. That happens during the American Civil War at the Battle of Antietam, after he feels that the North has a pretty strong position over the South at that time. He's not necessarily going into this war thinking we're going to end slavery. It just happens to be what is the end result of the American Civil War. So with all that information, you know that all of this that you're going to be reading about and researching is about his political campaign to become president of the United States. So you have to tell me whether or not you think he deserves that credit or he doesn't deserve that credit. He's ultimately considered a top president in U.S. history. Quite frankly, he is unbelievably important. I just want to hear your side of the story. All right, my homies. Deuces.